GI Joe like defined my childhood. I always kind of said that GI Joe was my best and frankly only friend growing up. Um, and The Real American Hero is my era. Being born in 1974, um, I we went to a drugstore and they had four figures, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm buying all four. And from there, I bought absolutely every toy. And well, we'll get to a point where I didn't buy one. Yeah, so it's an honor to talk to you, and uh, I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Well,
Um,
it's nice meeting you, and thank you for all that support and your continued support, I guess.
oh yeah, I mean Joe still means a lot to me to this day. Um, and so yeah, Kirk Bozigian is how you pronounce it, right?
Yes, you got it. Perfect.
And you know, a lot of the interviews that I saw with you on YouTube, they called you Kirk, and I was like, they're scared to say his last name. Uh,
No, I prefer Kirk anyway. So I mean,
okay, okay.
when I'm talking to collectors and friends like this, we're on a first name basis. So
Well, hopefully, I can call you Kirk for the
you
rest of
got
the.
it, Dave.
Great. So let's start not at the beginning of Joe, but because Joe had been around in the '60s and '70s as a 12-inch figure, kind of died off as I mean toys do, I guess. And at some point in the early '80s, there was a push to let's bring this back as a team of uh, military specialists. What was the I guess the driving force behind bringing it back as a 3 3/4 inch character and a team?
Well, the marketplace, marketing changes all the time. And happen to teach marketing these days. And one of the things I tell my students is marketing is dynamic, which means it's constantly changing. So when GI Joe was first introduced in the mid '60s, 1964, that was my era of GI Joe. I played with that original 12-inch soldier. And years later, when I got to work at Hasbro, it became my dream and then an honor to work on the GI Joe brand. And the marketplace had changed. It had gone from the 12-inch size figure down to a 3 3/4 inch size figure, and that all happened because people credit Star Wars with it, and the whole launch of the Star Wars line of smaller figures. Um, I think it was just not just Star Wars, but many other companies, including companies like Mego, had come out with 3 3/4 inch figures. They did chips. They did Buck Rogers licenses. Um, a company that many people don't even remember. Um, and I'm even drawing a blank. I think it was Knickerbocker Toys, which was primarily a plush toy company, had done a line of 3 3/4 inch characters for the Lone Ranger. And
Huh.
so it seemed to be there was a new standard being set for sizes of action figures. Plus, by going to that 3 3/4 inch size, we were able to do many more vehicles. And those vehicles are what drove the play pattern for G.I. Joe. And many people don't know, many collectors don't even realize this. I mean, they collect the figures. G.I. Joe was a vehicle first product line. The figures were the accessories for the vehicles.
Right.
These days, it's all flipped around. These days, it's the figures and the vehicles are accessories for the figures. But when to me, the genius of what we did was we launched a line to create lots of play value, a fantasy world that incorporated vehicles, and no one else has done that since.
Well, I mean, not for nothing, the vehicles were amazing. I mean, I think that was a big part of it. They were so playable. You know, and who doesn't want to, you know, put Steeler in a tank and and drive him around? I mean, it was,
Yeah,
you know,
well,
those were
yeah.
awesome. Um,
We had some very talented, vehicle designers working at Hasbro at the time, and um, uh, we just turned them loose, and they came up with some of those wildest and craziest ideas you've seen.
Now, the first wave that you know that everyone got, they were, aside from Scarlet and Snake Eyes, uh, they looked like military guys. Green outfits, nothing too extravagant. As with each passing line, more colors were brought in. The things looked a little more intricate. So tell me a little bit about the process of, because as product manager, you might not have created the look of the character, but you were a part of that process. Um, what was that like to, I guess, come up with a character idea and then create the look of it, and then I guess eventually it got to Larry Hama to really flesh out who the character was?
Yeah, the way the process was really simple. We knew we wanted to do a military line. I mean, that's what GI Joe is. Like I like to say, when you play Army, you play GI Joe. And
Mhm.
so it was always, our vision was always it was going to be a military line, but it was always a military line um, of the future, not 100 years into the future, and not even 20 years into the future. It was always a GI Joe of the future, maybe 5 years out into the future, maybe 10 years out into the future, at least in terms of um, their uniforms and the vehicles that they were going to use. They were always on the cutting edge. But it was always, always, always a military line. But OD or tan only gets you so far in
Right.
terms of shelf presence. And one of the things you're always fighting against are other action figure lines, which are more fanciful, more colorful. Um, and so you have to find a way to stand out against your competition. So one of the great things that we did, and I credit Ron Rudat and other designers like figure designers like Kirk Bozigian and Mark Pennington. These were guys who really, like, I guess, pushed the envelope of what a figure should look like, and we came up with lots of crazy ideas for our soldiers. Always we tried to be as realistic as we could, but fanciful costuming. Um,
Sure.
so we had characters wearing football jerseys, and we had Native American characters in full Native American
Yep.
Indian garb, and that was all by design by Ron Rudat. And then what we would do is we'd turn these designs over to Larry Hunt. We'd meet with Larry several times a year, either at or up in Rhode Island. We'd show him the line, we'd show him the figures, designs. And I always say Larry was the guy who took little lumps of plastic and breathed life into them. He gave them their soul. And that was the profiles that he wrote, the dossiers that he wrote for each of the characters.
Oh, sure. Those file cards were a big spark for the imagination, because, and I clipped them out and saved them all and all that, and because you got, like you said, pieces of plastic, and you could read about it and say, okay, I can develop a personality here. This is actually a person, in a sense.
Right.
And I thought that was uh, really important. Another thing that uh, the Larry Hama's GI Joe run is probably my favorite comic run of all time.
Well, that's
Uh,
saying a lot.
and I mean, I love comics, but again, GI Joe meant so much to me. And those early comics, listen, I collected them all. Forget about the early ones, but yeah, those comics were so important to me. Um, did you have? I guess you had some oversight of that. Was there anything that you went, "Hey, not that," or any kind of influence that maybe the comic then influenced the toys afterwards? Or
Well, my responsibility as product manager was, and I had a boss who turned me loose, and gave me most of the authority to run the line. Bob Krupus, I give him all credit in terms of shaping and molding my career and having the vision to keep pushing for the reintroduction of GI Joe. My job was to work on developing the line, laying out the marketing plan, the strategic thinking of the line. But I also liked to think of myself as a technical advisor on the line, which meant that I had overall responsibility for the comic books, the TV miniseries, and eventually the TV series. That was all part of my job in terms of working with and coordinating with our advertising agency, Griffin Book, and their subdivision, Sunbow Productions. So I had overall responsibility, not just for the toys, not just for the marketing of the toys, but the overall responsibility of determining the entire vision of the G.I. Joe brand. And so one of the things that Bob Lucas taught me was, hey, we've got to let each of the different disciplines, whether it's the R&D team developing the toys, whether it's Larry Hama writing the comic books, whether it's Sunbow creating the TV series, we've got to let each of them, because they're experts in their own world, we've got to let each of them know that they can do what they need to do in their world to make things successful. Your job is just to make sure things stay consistent. And that's how I viewed my job. I was an editor, if you will. I like to kid Larry about the fact that he was the editor of the G.I. Joe comic book. The comic book, I was the editor of Larry Hunt, because he would send us dossiers that went on for 2 or 3 pages for some of these characters. And I had to edit those down to fit on the back of a file card on the G.I. Joe packaging.
That's well, I mean, he did create full characters. The cartoon, one of the things I loved about the comic was it seemed like it was, I don't know, speaking up to me, like it wasn't treating me like I was a moron, even though I was a dumb kid. The cartoon was clearly for a different market, and
Absolutely.
I mean, and I watched every episode. I loved it. There was a different cast of main characters. I mean, like, your Dukes and your, whether, Alpine and Bazooka, they weren't necessarily main characters in the comic book, but the cartoon they were. And also the ever popular PSAs. Knowing is half the battle. Did you guys? I guess you let Sunbow just say, "We know this is for kids," or maybe it had to be for kids, or maybe there had to be certain parental restrictions that
Well,
that they had to follow.
no, they weren't. It wasn't so parental restrictions or anything like that. It was, and it really hit me last weekend, believe it or not. I'm a big fan of westerns, and last weekend I happened to be watching Hopalong Cassidy episode. I remember Hopalong Cassidy as a kid, but I mean I hadn't watched Hopalong Cassidy in 50-something years.
Right.
So I started watching the Hopalong Cassidy TV series, and he always ended his TV show with a little lesson aimed at the viewers, who were children, boys and girls.
Right.
I don't know, 6 to 15. And it hit me then. That's what Sunbow was trying to do with those PSAs. They were trying to reach out and give some bit of advice and kind of soften the hard edge, in a sense, of what the child had just seen, all the action that he had just seen in the TV series. And so I just thought I thought that was an interesting connection, especially since most of the writers of those G.I. Joe TV shows probably grew up like me, watching those Hopalong Cassidy episodes.
Yeah, I think that I think it worked because I mean there's 2 camps of I mean, and I don't know if they really view themselves that way, but there are the people who who's like Snake Eyes is the main character, and because so much of the comic was about the mystery and all that. And then there's people that like Snake Eyes. I barely know who that guy is. It's all about shipwreck, you
Yeah,
know. And so, and I think that it worked because you had, no matter who you were, you could find those characters that you loved and connected with.
yeah,
But as I mentioned earlier, there was some characters I did not connect with. Um, I loved that Joe was so barely sci-fi. Um, I could look at those vehicles and say, yeah, it's possible. I mean,
mhm,
we probably have stuff like this in the testing stages right now.
right.
I assumed that you guys had connections to the to the government.
We did,
Um,
we did.
there you go.
Yeah,
Um, or maybe the government was seeing your toys and saying, "How do we make that happen?" But when I really kind of jumped off a little bit for a bit was when it was revealed that the actual founders of Cobra were snake men. And that was for me a little too sci-fi.
yeah.
It was a little too out there for me. I went, okay, I've lost the believability here. Um, just for my own sense of settling my brain. Uh, tell me about Cobra Law.
Cobra La was the worst idea in the GI Joe brand ever, and I have
I agree.
always said it. I said it at the time when I first saw it working at Hasbro. I was off the brand. I was on and off the brand in my career. Okay, at Hasbro. So when Cobra La was proposed, which was part of the GI Joe movie, um, I just happened to be, like I had been working on another. I was heading up the GI Joe direct mail. Okay,
Yeah, which thank you for that, by the way.
well, I was working on that, creating a business from zero to about $15 million,
Not
and
bad.
yeah, and when I saw the first designs for Cobra Law, and when I read the first story or script of Cobra Law, I just shook my head and I went in to see Bob and said, "What are you guys doing?" And Cobra Law was the creation of Sunbow. It was primarily the creation of Joe Bacall, who was the creative director at Griffin Bacall, and also the executive producer of everything at Sunbow. Joe was a big science fiction fan. That's the only way I can explain it. And I think Joe was also looking for an adversary for G.I. Joe that would not be so directly military. And so that was the whole evolution of Cobra Law. And to me, it was just, it, I couldn't wrap my head around it either. So you're not
Yeah, I
the
mean,
only one.
because even someone like a Zartan, you go, okay, well, maybe technology will get to the point where, I mean, because even in the Avengers films and stuff like that, we have where they can pull off their face and it's someone else's face. Maybe technology with nanoparticles will get to that someday. Uh, Snake Man, I don't know.
No,
Uh,
I agree.
so you like I said, you ended up in charge of all of Boys Toys, correct?
Correct.
For the company.
Yes.
What are some other lines you worked on, like kind of at that time?
At the time it was called WWF. Now it's called WWE.
Oh
Um,
man, you are king geek. That, holy crap! He worked on WWF too. All
I
right,
worked.
cool.
Yeah, I worked on Inhumanoids. I worked on Cowboys of Moon Mesa. I worked on Air Raiders. Some of these failed. Many of them
Right.
failed. Worked on Stargate. Worked on the early '90s reintroduction of Transformers. Let's see. Worked on Tonka trucks. This was all part of Boys Toys. Worked on many boys action brands that never even hit the marketplace. Headed up Cops and Crooks. Um, Again, brands I can't even remember.
That a lot of children owe many hours of fun to the stuff you guys created. That's amazing. So, do you have a favorite GI Joe character? And yes, you're allowed to say Law.
My favorite is obviously Law because he was sculpted in my likeness. My second favorite is Steeler, um,
Interesting.
because the Mobat was is perhaps my favorite GI Joe toy because it was an homage to a toy that I had as a kid, a model kit that I had put together as a 10-year-old called Battling Betsy, which was a motorized tank, realistic model kit. It was an M60 tank and could climb over everything. I played with that toy for hours. Like I say, it was a model kit first, a toy second, but I would just constantly play with that with my little plastic army soldiers. And so the Mobat was an homage to that. It was probably the first toy-ized GI Joe toy that we created because it was a toy that actually did something,
Mhm.
meaning you turned it on and you could play with it, as opposed to what the line had become over the years, simply snap together model kits. So that's why Steeler is and the Mobat are my two favorite toys.
This is unrelated, and I'm going to edit it out. First of all, my mom hated you because of the flag, the giant boat. I mean, why did you have to do that to our house? Um, but completely unrelated. My dad actually he's passed away, but he had one of the world's largest collections of cowboy memorabilia, and he was personal friends with all of those classic cowboys. And so growing up, I met all of those
Oh
guys and
wow!
hung out with them. And also, you were talking about, the old, they predate me by a few years, but I grew up watching all of those, and being buddies with like your Lash LaRue's and
Oh man!
all those guys,
Yeah,
and Gabby Hayes and all that.
yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
yeah, so that was a pretty cool geeky part of my childhood
Yeah.
that
Well, I mean,
uh
I to just to carry it on, I get up every day when I'm working at home and I'm working down here in my office, which is in my basement. I turn on Stars Western Channel and I just have the old time westerns, or I switch to Grit if it's something that's not, and I just geek out on these old TV westerns and movies.
yeah, they were pretty awesome. So uh obviously, you're Law, you're an actual GI Joe. They One of the most successful, I'm guessing here, but one of the most successful Joes was a real life person, Sergeant Slaughter.
Hmm.
I mean, speaking of WWF, and you also had William the Refrigerator Perry. You kind of maybe had Rocky. Um, so, what was the decision to, hey, let's actually bring in real people and have them join the GI Joe team? Not that Rocky's a real person, but the Sylvester Stallone is. So yeah, what was it that, like, hey, let's make these guys members of the team?
Uh, I think again that was part of Bob's genius, Bob Prupus's genius. You know, he tried to apply real consumer packaged goods marketing to what we were doing in GI Joe. So he was always looking for ways to promote the product outside of simply just doing advertising. So incorporating real life personalities as spokespeople for your brand made a lot of sense as long as they had a legitimate reason for being part of the brand. Now, Fridge Perry didn't, but Fridge Perry happened to be a huge, outsized NFL celebrity at the time that we did it. Um, Sarge was part of the WWF, and his persona as a drill instructor, that was part of the WWF, just made perfect sense. Um, uh, Rocky made sense as a trainer, a combat trainer for our line, until we found out that Stallone's agent had also signed him up to do Rambo with a competitor, Lico, at the time. And we just said, sorry, we can't do that.
Right.
So it was just part of a way of keeping G.I. Joe current in in the um, in the marketplace with kids and moms, and generated news.
Sure. Yeah.
Every time we did it, there were lots of stories in the press, so it was great public relations. So that was all part of the magic of making GI Joe successful.
And I mean, I think Sergeant Slaughter obviously was huge for GI Joe. So Elephant in the Room.
Yeah.
Um, there's a GI Joe movie coming out. Well, they claim it's a GI Joe movie. Um, uh, what are your thoughts on, well, first of all, Rise of Cobra and the sequel, and this is the Snake Eyes movie is kind of a reboot. Um, Obviously, I haven't seen it, but Snake Eyes is awfully handsome, which I don't recall ever that being the case in the comics. And he sure does talk a lot um, for a guy who doesn't talk. Um, what are your thoughts on the upcoming Snake Eyes? I don't know if you've seen it or not, or what are your thoughts? Should,
Well, I mean, I've seen the other two movies. I plan to see Snake Eyes. This movie. To me, it's not GI Joe. It's going to be it'll probably be a great movie, sure, but it's not GI Joe, and I don't even think it exists in the same universe as GI Joe. It's a total reboot, um, as I understand it. But I'm a little disappointed because if you're going to call something, and they don't even call it GI Joe, they're calling it Snake Eyes, and you can barely see as part of the sub tagline the GI Joe logo on it. So I guess I just don't consider it a GI Joe movie. I consider it a Snake Eyes movie. And to me, it's the easy way out. What I mean by that is um, Snake Eyes is the closest thing to a superhero to the GI Joe line. Okay, he's a masked character. He has a monotone uh, outfit. Okay, he does extraordinary human things. He's skilled. Ninjas, let's face it, ninjas are, quote, superheroes. If you They have special mystical powers, right?
sure.
Um, and so it's easy to take. Let's just look at comic books, right? It's easy to take a character like Snake Eyes and build a storyline around him in comic books because he is a comic book hero. He fits the format, the definition, at least from my perspective, of what a comic book hero is.
Right. He doesn't
So
look strange standing next to a Deadpool, you know?
exactly. In fact, I've seen a comic book cover, a fantasy cover of Snake Eyes fighting Batman.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Whereas, I mean,
it's not out of place,
Breaker,
right? Yeah,
right.
and it's not out of place, right? Batman fighting uh, Brunt or
Yeah,
Batman
Brunt, Short Fuse.
or Duke.
Right.
It's a little out of context, right? So to me, Snake Eyes was always the easiest character to turn into a movie. If what the newest hottest movies these days are the MCU hero movies, right? Action
Sure.
movies. It's a lot more difficult, and that's why it's a lot more challenging for writers, for creatives, to create a team of GI Joe military characters to go on military adventures. And yet it can be done.
Sure.
Okay, we talked about Stallone earlier. Stallone's two biggest movies in the last several years have been The Expendables.
Right.
Those are that's GI Joe.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the story. Each one of those movies, take the Expendables logo off and put the GI Joe logo on it, and you've got the GI Joe movie,
Right.
the way it should have been done. But
Sure.
we have
Yeah.
but we have a Hollywood right now that um, doesn't want to promote the U.S. military. because they have to go for a global audience, despite the
Yeah.
fact that G.I. Joe was sold globally.
Right.
So, I mean, don't get me started. I could
I
take over this whole interview and just go down a path that we don't all want to go down. But Snake Eyes to me is not GI Joe, and
I
I don't care if they're introducing Cobra. Okay, the images I've seen of the woman playing the Baroness certainly doesn't look like anything that I've pictured the Baroness looking like, or certainly nothing like what came out of the comic book. Scarlet, I guess, is pretty close. Um, it is Scarlet, right? That they're saying is in this movie.
yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure Scarlett. Yeah,
yeah.
Scarlett's in it, and a wonderful
You can tell.
actress is
You can
playing
tell
her. But
I haven't paid much attention to this movie, um, even though I'll go see it because it's part of my heritage. So
yeah, I'm gonna go see it probably opening night as well, just so I can. I'm sure it'll be a great action film. I'm gonna have a
I've been calling it it's going to be a typical chop socky movie.
yeah.
It's going to be a Jackie Chan movie, and that's how I look at it.
Because I mean, even
I
Rise
hope
of
I
Cobra,
hope I'm wrong.
even Rise of Cobra with the super suits and stuff like that, it didn't feel. It felt more like they were saying, "How do we make this not military? How do we make it more superheroic?" Um,
Yep.
which hey, superheroes are big and all that. I feel like maybe there's room for GI Joe and superheroes
Yeah.
and your Star Wars, and maybe they don't all have to be the same thing.
Right.
Um,
Well, again,
so
I'll go back to the success of Expendables.
yeah,
Right. I
yeah,
mean, come on. Stallone had the vision of taking old, out of shape, former action heroes
right. Who could
and
still kick my ass?
exactly, and creating a whole new buddy movie featuring
Right.
them. Right. And he's done two, and I think there's a third one coming out.
No,
So it's like,
I think there are three.
could be.
I think yeah,
Maybe
yeah. I think the third one was a disappointment because they changed it from an R to a PG-13, and I think the big thing with that, which is why a lot of people it went under their radar, was I think the movie got leaked in full in movie quality on the internet like 2 months before it came out in theaters.
wow.
And so as a result, that third movie just when it came out in theaters, it just I mean
Yeah.
nothing. Because so many people had already seen it for free.
Right.
Um,
But I'll give you another example. Again, saying why can't Hollywood do something different than a quote superhero movie? Fast and Furious. The last few Fast and Furious movies have been a GI Joe movie.
right. I
Okay.
mean, yeah. I mean, which you say, well, Fast and Furious, a car can't actually do that. Yeah, it's not a documentary. It's slightly science fiction. I
It's
mean,
called the willing suspension of disbelief.
right,
That's the term for it. So just go with it. But
right, yeah.
we've got to do things now to appeal to a global audience. We've got to do things now to appeal to China. The movie has to have a big opening in China these days for it to be any kind of a movie. And so that's what's happening. We're getting the influence of China on American culture.
I mean, just to wrap this up, I don't want to keep you too long. Um, you had mentioned, maybe Hollywood's not wanting to focus too much on military heroes. I've seen where on some of your panels, your Joe panels at conventions, you take a moment to honor the real life American heroes. Um, Obviously, this event that we're doing is a mental health benefit or a mental health event for uh, veterans and active duty. Um, can you speak a bit about? I mean, obviously, why you like to take that platform to honor the troops, but also to kind of geek it up a bit. Do you have any recollections or stories or letters from people who served in the military about their childhood connection to G.I. Joe?
Yes. I'm always moved by veterans who come up to see me at GI Joe conventions, who have told me that, well, they've told me a couple of things. One, growing up, many of them said the only friend they had was GI Joe.
Yeah, I'm not. I said that earlier, but I'm not a veteran at all.
No, I know,
But yeah,
David. I
yeah.
know,
Oh
but
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
just
That's
saying,
amazing. Go. Yeah.
it's amazing to me that so many have said that. I've had several come up to me and say, I lost my father at a very young age, and GI Joe was always there for me. My mom would always buy me a GI Joe or a GI Joe vehicle, and they comforted me because they were part of my bedroom. Um, and again, many of them would say GI Joe inspired me to join the military. Um, Sense of service, a sense of duty, a sense of country. And so I always, when I do my panels, I always end, I give a nice PowerPoint presentation about how G.I. Joe brand evolved. I always end by saluting the audience and the veterans who are in the audience, because they're the reason we're able to produce toys like G.I. Joe in this country. So to all the veterans in your audience, I salute you. Thank you for your service.
Okay, let's get started. I know I'm supposed to talk about my combat experiences, to understand how they've shaped me. Which part? Just what happened over there? Or the part that followed me home? All clear, Shauna. Of course all is. But how are you?
Hey, Sergeant. I heard you were having some trouble coming home.
I'm sorry you had to come all this way just to, help me get my head on straight.
Shauna, it's not like that.
As the Cobra Technologies battle android troopers appear to have malfunctioned and turned on the Transcarpathian military.
Why can't I get past this, Connie? It's not like I took a bullet or lost my leg. Why can't I just move on?
The so-called bats are now standard issue in more than 70 militaries around the world, raising concerns that...
And why can you? We went through the same crap over there. How can you just find a place for it and then keep going?
I had to work through it too, Shauna. In my own way. Everyone's brain deals with these things differently. But it's just that. A difference, not a weakness.
Well, it feels like a weakness. And I'm not used to feeling weak. I was a soldier. That's all I've ever been. And if I can't be that, then a part of me wishes I never made it back.
Shauna.
No, I mean it. Would that have been so terrible? They toast me at the NCO club. Someone pins my picture to the wall, and then... that's it. That's the end of the story for Shauna O'Hara.
Well, okay. I guess if that's how you feel, guess I'm done here.
Yeah. I guess you are.
Of course, if you did want help, there are people out there who know how to get through this a hell of a lot more than you and I. And I hate to bring this up, but you do kind of owe me one.
I owe you a lot more than one.
Yeah. And now I'm cashing all of them in.
Okay, so what's first? Group therapy? Listening to a bunch of my fellow burnouts whining about all of our burnout problems? And then magically, poof, I have a big breakthrough.
I think you might be surprised.
And has anyone else noticed the soda pop situation? The soda pop situation. I'm out of circulation for a year, and when I get back, there's like 12 different kinds of every soda. Who the hell needs all that?
Wow, I can see why that would be a big problem to you.
Shauna.
You're damn right it's a problem. So not only do I gotta deal with this snake wrapped around my brain, I also gotta live with the knowledge that while I was over there watching my brothers die, all these NPCs were, slurping down raspberry vanilla paoli cola. And I'm supposed to do it too? Be a good little civilian and just forget about everything. I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's just too hard. Over there, all you had to do was survive. But when you get back home,
They expect you to live. And he just kept coming closer, closer, and closer to the checkpoint. We followed escalation of force procedures to the damn letter. We held up our hands. Harris shouted at them to stop the vehicle. Wadriga, Wadriga. We showed our weapons, fired a warning, but they just wouldn't stop. So I took the shot. There were 2 kids in the backseat. No weapons or explosives of any kind. Just a distracted father, not paying attention to the road.
Scarlet? Scarlet, you seem a little distracted. Do you hear what I asked?
Yeah, sorry. But yes, I did it. Recorded my whole story, 4 hours of battlefield horror. But you also told me to re-listen to it, and I don't know about that part, Dr. Rich. I don't see how putting myself through hell is gonna give me some giant breakthrough.
Kenneth, and I'm not a doctor. And your problems definitely won't be solved by one giant breakthrough. But maybe stick with it just a little bit longer. And if listening to your story is too hard, then that's okay. Just let it play while you're in the room.
And I'm honestly not sure if she was still aware enough to realize that my hands were the only things holding in her guts until the medic could get to her. And it took so long. Her life was slipping away and every moment felt like forever.
I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get back here. I'm sure it felt like...
No, I get it. Weird times in Transcarpathia. Who would have thought a tech company named after a poisonous snake might turn out to be the bad guys?
But more importantly, how's therapy going?
Oh yeah, it's great. I'm learning all about, being more aware of my thoughts and feelings and changing unhelpful thinking patterns and working on problem solving and dealing with reminders and what is the point? I can't live like this. I'm a soldier, not whatever it is they're trying to turn me into. I'm just not.
Okay, you get that out of your system?
Screw yourself, comrade. What did you say?
I said I tried it.
The raspberry vanilla?
Paoli cola. And it's not bad. Well, it tastes like chemicals, but it's also not bad. Guess I just realized. We're here, we're alive. We might as well try to enjoy the same things as everyone else.
Sounds like giving up to me.
Giving up what?
Your military identity.
Oh, sure. That's not an overly dramatic take or anything. Besides, my wife says maybe I shouldn't be clinging so hard to the soldier life. But she's a lot smarter than me, so...
Yeah, well, I guess we all have our security blankets. And now I'm back. And it's like I have to relearn everything. What it's like to feel the grass between your toes. What it's like to To sit at a red light and not wonder whether the car behind you is planning an ambush. What it's like to not live your life like you're in a shooting gallery.
Federal agents raided Cobra Technologies' former headquarters in Comilla Grande, California this morning, hoping to find the location of the so-called Cobra commander. Meanwhile, Cobra forces continue to spread out from Transcarpathia, attempting to annex surrounding territories, while NATO forces...
You got anything softer than this, Tony?
Huh?
Sorry, Connie. You have people down there in Sierra Gordo who need you a hell of a lot more than I do. And I have people who understand what I'm going through a hell of a lot more than you do. Like... Roger! I'm gonna try it, okay? I'm gonna try it. But it's warm and it looks gross. Ugh. And if I don't like it, there's a whole case for you out in my car. What? What is it, Kenneth?
Roger's wife found him last night when she and the kids came home from visiting her mother.
What? How? He was doing so well. He had a breakthrough. He had...
It's a long process, Shauna. 3 steps forward, sometimes 1 step back, but sometimes 4. Shauna, you need me to call you a cab?
Okay, Lexi. Delete entire recording.
Recording deleted. Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice.
Please call me back, Connie. Please. Freaking Kenny is leaving me 3 voicemails a week, but nothing from you. Where are you?
When you have finished recording, you may hang.
What's going on? Well, here we are. I don't know, Roger. I knew there was more going on in your life than I knew about. Unexpected negative events and all that, but I guess I'm still pretty pissed at you. And... Conrad? Connie, is that you?
It's me. I'm sorry it's been so long, and I'm sorry for the way
We don't need to do that, Connie.
Of course.
How are you? Are you staying safe?
I'm staying busy. Working with General Hawk on a new initiative, now that it looks like this war isn't gonna end soon. There are a lot of people around the world looking for a fight, and we're gonna help them find it.
I'm ready, Connie. I'm one of them.
No. Not yet. I'm sorry, Shauna. But you need to win your own war first.
Okay, let's start over again. Though it feels a little odd revisiting my war when there's a new one going on. And this one, it's my war too. It's everyone's war. Duke was right.
So what I want to know is, why the heck is this still a therapy group and not a resistance group?
One more at a time.
Damn straight, Shauna.
You want to share with the group? Because honestly, I could use a good laugh.
Connie, I think I just had a breakthrough. I know. Being triggered by the noise doesn't seem like a good thing. But it made me realize it hasn't happened in months.
So, doesn't having one now mean you're going backwards?
Look, I keep waiting for some big breakthrough. I keep waiting to be healed. But while I was waiting, I think I started slowly getting better. Learning to distinguish what's happening now from what happened then. Learning to live again. And I think that's maybe the best I can ask for. At least for now. And that's okay, because I am getting better. And that means I'm ready.
Ready for what?
Ready for the fight. Ready to join you in General Hawk's new resistance initiative. I can help you train these civilians and whip them into shape.
Shauna, that's...
What I'm doing. Because if there's one thing my recovery has taught me, is that when a battle comes to your door, you either fight or you lose. And I didn't work this hard just to lose the next war. Besides, I know you. I know what a big risk taker you are and how dangerous these missions will be. You've kept me alive this last year and a half. It's time that I return the favor.
Okay, Shauna. Welcome to G.I. Joe.